My parents went out of town for a weekend for a short vacation. I knew they were going to the casino, and whatever they did, I didn't know. I was alone at home because I'm an only child. This happened last year when I was 15 years old. It's kind of embarrassing for me to admit because I never had to show my face, and you all never knew who I am. But I'll tell you that I was nervous about staying alone at home. I was somewhat scared, you could say, about staying alone overnight and throughout the weekend. I wasn't sure if it's normal for a 15-year-old teenager or not, because my parents didn't seem to think it's a big deal at all, even though I told them about my anxiety if something happened to me. They're about 30 minutes away from here, so they would definitely be the first ones I'd call. I slept soundly. I don't know how long I slept. Maybe a few hours at least. I woke up because my mom called me incessantly. She had sent messages more than 10 times along with my dad as well. They kept calling until I finally answered the phone. Luckily, I finally heard my phone ringing and it finally woke me up. And I was really grateful it happened before something terrible happened. I was in a very deep sleep despite my anxiety. I really slept. I'm usually not someone who's easily woken up. I never woke up when I heard my phone ringing, whether it's the alarm or someone calling me. 90% of the time, I just don't hear it. I even sleep with my phone right next to my head to help ensure I hear it. But it still doesn't help much. I answered the phone and my mom was hysterical. She was almost screaming at me, asking if I was okay. And when I said I was okay, she started crying. She said there was someone in their house like a stranger. She said she got a notification on the Ring Doorbell app, and I heard my dad say he saw someone standing on their front porch, crouching down and looking straight into the camera. She said my dad and her were on their way home, and they were still 20 minutes away. She said my dad also called the police, and they were on their way, and they might arrive in a few minutes. I started having a panic attack, and it took me a while to fully understand the situation at hand because it felt so surreal for a moment, like a dream. But I quickly snapped out of it when I heard a knock on my bedroom window. I ran straight to the front and back doors to make sure they were locked. Then I ran to my mom's room with a knife, and I hid in the back of the closet, behind some clothes. The man came in through the unlocked window, which I didn't know was unlocked. I heard the man walking around the house with big boots on the hard tile floor, and I guess he was carrying a backpack, which he used to put all the items he tried to steal. He took some of my old iPhones from my room along with my PlayStation 5 and some other things. And then I heard someone opening my mom's bedroom door. I hoped and prayed it was the police, but I knew it wasn't. Every step he took felt like he was getting closer to the closet. My heart rate dramatically increased so much that I genuinely thought I was going to faint. That's when he knocked very softly on the closet door. When he did that, I felt a shiver down my spine and I knew I was in trouble. I knew I had to do something because as soon as he opened the closet door, I knew he would find me. I wasn't hiding well enough. I thought it was either me or him, and I wouldn't give up no matter how much I wanted to. I stood up, and as I did, he opened the closet door. That's when we heard the sound of police sirens in the distance. He was much bigger than me, so it was very easy for him to overpower me even though I was holding a knife. He grabbed my arm as I tried to push him away with it. Then he pushed me onto the bed and hit me on the side of my head. He took my parents' safe from the closet, and he ran out the front door. He got into his car and sped off, but as he left the neighborhood, 3 police cars immediately followed him. They chased him for more than 10 miles until he finally veered off the highway and crashed into a sign. He was stuck in the car and couldn't move, so now he was trapped, and there was nothing he could do. They arrested him, and now he's in jail awaiting trial. He's an older guy, so I really don't think he'll ever get out of jail. One of the police officers stayed at the house with me while we waited for my parents to help calm me down so he could get as much information as possible. My parents arrived only after talking briefly for 5 minutes with the officer, and they ran towards me and hugged me with tears streaming down their faces. It's been over a year now, and I've never really stayed alone too often again. But when I do, it's very rare, and it's never more than an hour or two. I can't wait to hear about his sentence. I know he'll be in prison for a very long time. I just hope they don't go easy on him, and I hope they give him the maximum punishment. I mean, after all that, he really deserves it. I was watching TV in my room, perhaps almost dozing off, when I heard the doorbell ring. It was around 10 p.m., so it was very unusual for someone to ring the doorbell at that time. Of course, I sat up in panic and woke my husband. He wanted to go and look outside, but I suggested we just check the Ring camera app instead. So that's what we did. I opened the app on my phone, but there was nothing there. As strange as it was, there wasn't much we could do, so we laid back down for a bit, and we continued discussing it. My husband said I should go back to sleep now. He would stay awake for a while, and he would keep an eye out for anything suspicious. I fell asleep in his lap, and it felt like only a few minutes when I woke up because my husband was almost running to the door. There was someone at the door again, but the person was already gone before he got there. John, my husband, decided to put on his sandals and peek outside for a moment to see if the person who came earlier was lurking around the house. However, he found no one and didn't see or hear anything suspicious at all. When my husband came back into the house, he was almost entirely convinced that it was just the neighbor kids trying to mess with us. He said that if it happened again, we should ignore it, because we were giving them what they wanted by getting involved in the situation. We agreed that we would talk to their parents the next morning about what they were doing. He had talked to them before when we caught the kids wet from playing with our summer toys last time. We thought after that one time, everything would be over, and they would learn from the lesson. At that moment, that was the only thing I could think of, and that it was them again. I hoped it would be them. Something harmless like that was nothing compared to what happened that night. We both went back to sleep shortly after that. I woke up one last time because someone was banging on our bedroom window. It really scared us, and we both jumped out of bed again because the sound was much louder than the doorbell. The window was only a few feet from our bed, and they were hitting it very hard, repeatedly, in a very slow and steady rhythm. "Okay, enough is enough," I said. I called the police and followed my husband outside to see what was happening. There was a man standing outside our bedroom window, almost not wearing any clothes at all. He was only wearing underwear, no shirt, shoes, or socks. As we turned the corner of the house, he just stood and stared at us. He had a look on his face that I'll never forget, an empty stare on his face, as if there was nothing behind his eyes at all. "Hey, get out of here. The police are on their way," my husband said. He turned around and started running through my backyard. But then he stopped and grabbed my son's baseball bat, who wasn't home at the time. He was at his friend's house for a sleepover. But a stranger took his baseball bat from the ground and then turned around again, slowly walking towards us. We ran back inside because we weren't going to try to fight someone with a baseball bat. He started hitting all our decorations around the house and damaging our property. He even hurt himself with something, I guess, or I don't know. But he was bleeding a lot from his arm, and he wrote the word "kill" on our living room window with his own blood. Then he continued walking around the house, smashing all the windows he could reach. The police arrived as he was doing that, and he tried to escape, but they caught him without any problem at all. They handcuffed him too. Turns out the guy was on drugs, and he escaped from the mental hospital a few hours earlier, which was only 10 minutes away from our home. It was all so crazy. and we kept thinking about it all the time. Some people didn't even believe us when we told them this story. I hope it never happened, but it did. My husband and I now each have our own pistol, and he has a shotgun that he keeps in the safe for protection. Once our son turns 16, we'll teach him how to use them, so he can protect himself too, if it ever comes to a life or death situation. My family and I lived in a nice area in a pretty decent house, and everything was fine, like the average American dream, you could say. We were very close to each other, and really a very happy family. Me, my younger sister, my 2 younger brothers, and of course our parents. This is my story about what happened on the worst night of our lives. It was 11 p.m. on a school night in the middle of the week. I was sleeping, or at least almost asleep, because I had school the next day. My dad stayed up more often than the others and watched TV in the living room and did what he did. He worked from home and ran a very successful online business, so he didn't have to get up very early to work every day. My mom didn't need to work because my dad made a lot of money and was able to take care of all of us, but she usually went to bed before everyone else. She liked her alone time reading in bed and doing what she wanted, you know, like mothers do. She woke up early every day and made us breakfast and drove us to school, so we didn't have to take the bus. Anyway, around 11 p.m. on this specific night, when we were all asleep except my dad, who was still awake, it was good because things could have ended up worse than what happened if he had fallen asleep. Someone rang the doorbell and my dad said hesitantly approached the front door and looked out the peephole, but no one was there. He told us and the police that at that moment he thought it was just some crazy kids trying to ring the doorbell and run away, because it often happened at our old house, it seemed. I don't really remember that because I was probably still little at the time, but that's just what he thought at the time. So I guess he dismissed it, but also took extra action by staying alert and not letting his guard down. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang again, but this time he almost ran to the door. But when he got there this time, he was more frustrated. He opened the door right away and was really surprised by what he saw. There was a late 40s woman standing 5 feet or more in front of the door with a decent-sized knife in her hand. She was trembling and seemed to be whispering to herself. My dad couldn't understand what she was saying, but he yelled at her and told her to leave. Then he closed and locked the door. Then he took all of us kids and brought us all to our parents' room. Then he instructed my mom to call the police and tell them that he had someone on our property with a knife trying to get in. She told us to stay quiet and lock the door, not to open the door under any circumstances unless he said the passphrase. The passphrase was love, and if he said it, that meant we needed to let him in. She made it very clear not to open the door unless he said that, no matter what happened. My dad grabbed his 12K shotgun and his 9mm pistol and waited for the police in the living room. A few minutes later, after pacing back and forth, someone crashed through the window in the dining room. My dad rushed over there and immediately shot him in the head with his pistol when he lunged at him with his machete. At this point, he wasn't just panicking, but we were all panicking. When it was revealed like that, it was a relief, because we had no idea what was going on. I tried to run outside to make sure he was okay, but my mom held me back and screamed at me and told me that we needed to listen to Dad, and reassured me that he was okay, that he wouldn't let anything happen to us. Initially, my dad thought it was just the woman, but when the man came in through the window and he shot him dead in the dining room, he started panicking 100 times harder, not just because he had just killed someone, but because he realized that there might be more people trying to get in. But he remained calm as best as he knew how the police arrived not long after that. They even found someone else who was on our property too, whom my dad didn't see at all. But we were all 100% sure that he was also involved with it. He also had a weapon. So it was almost certain that he was involved. They never found the woman who rang the doorbell, though it made us very uncomfortable and anxious that she might come back for revenge and come back with someone else this time, with weapons or something. They were all very paranoid since my dad didn't get any trouble because it was ruled in court that he had the right to carry a weapon to protect himself and that he was just acting in self-defense. My dad didn't let us kids out until they brought the body out and cleaned up most of the dining room from all the blood. My mom and dad talked to the police for over an hour, and we had to stay in their room the whole time. An officer even came in there to talk to us, to get our version of the story, to get as much information as possible. Eventually, my dad redid the entire kitchen because there was too much bloodstains in so many different places that it was too hard to clean up. None of us used the dining room until it was fixed, but we all saw the aftermath. It was a grim and very dark reminder of what happened. My dad killed a man, but he only did it to protect us. He was never the same person since then, and I can't imagine what it feels like to kill someone, even though he deserved it psychologically. I'm sure it was very damaging. Fortunately, we all have each other, and my dad has a good support system and a very loving family.